Hello and welcome to Shine, Love and Light On. Today we're talking about conscious eating and I've got the beautiful Steph Schall here with me, and Steph is a friend of mine. She is the owner and operator of Steph Schall's Cooking Hub. Is that right, Steph?
Steph Schall Hub.
Steph Schall Hub. And she's got a cooking club, which I'm in, which is why I got it all confused, which has been online and launched in COVID last year. It's a real pleasure to have Steph here. I'm really interested because she has introduced me to a whole lot of new recipes and ideas and stuff around plant-based eating. And I've been a vegetarian on and off in my life. I had 10 years in my 20s as a vegetarian. I kind of stepped away when I was pregnant and through my kids' the first 12, 13, 14 years, and now I'm back on board. So I've been a vegetarian again for maybe 15 months. And in that, I was interested in exploring plant-based. So Steph came along and I was really excited to get involved. So before I go too much into my story, we're interested in yours, Steph. Thanks so much for being here. Perhaps you could just give a little intro on how you got into plant-based, and then we can talk about why we think this is an important topic.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very honoured to be here. Been listening to your podcast ever since I met you. What was it? We worked out it was about last Feb.
Yeah.
Feb.
It feels long.
Yeah, it feels like so much longer. But yeah, really happy to be here. So my background is with the plant-based eating was that I, in my late 20s, went through a bit of an epiphany that my partying lifestyle wasn't really sustainable. So along with a move from Adelaide to Melbourne, I did a whole lifestyle change, and I started training for marathons, and I also, half marathons. I also delved really deep into kind of training and recovery and stuff like that. So a lot of what I read supported the idea that a plant-based diet was better for recovery, especially with endurance kind of sports. So I kind of just thought, why not? Gave it a go, and thought I'd dip my toe in the water and do vegetarian for a little while, but that kind of lasted for a week, and I just went, what the hell, I'll just go vegan, and kind of all or nothing girl, and really loved it. Loved the challenge around finding new ways to incorporate flavor. And when I met my husband, like shortly after, he kind of encouraged me to start exploring maybe teaching other people how to cook that way, and from there my business kind of started. So when I became pregnant with my first boy, I started up my business, and very small, kind of just word of mouth stuff, just teaching cooking classes out of my kitchen, and it's all kind of just grown from there.
So how old are your boys now? So we've got an idea.
So Orby is just turning 5 in a couple of weeks. Yeah. And then Ollie's turning 3. So
and how long were you vegan before that? So this is
before I started up the business, probably, when did I move here? When I was 27. So probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I'd been plant-based before I started. Yeah. And I've always been really, hey?
You dived right.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
And did you ever look back?
Yes. No, I mean, when I was pregnant, I remember having some crazy meat and cheese cravings, and I remedied that by just introducing a little bit of fish back into my diet. I didn't want to go back to meat or eggs or anything like that. So yeah, just did a bit of fish. But then once I had my boys, I didn't feel the need for that. It seemed to be just a pregnancy thing. So I just, listened to my body and did it, and then felt that I didn't need it anymore. So I didn't. But, pregnancy cravings are weird anyway. There was no pickles and ice cream, but there was fish.
Just meat. I think I had that meat one, and I had a mum who was very concerned about it. And I think I was pregnant a lot longer ago, and I think there wasn't as much information around what's the benefits of eating plant-based diet and stuff like that, which is part of the reason why I wanted us to talk about it, because this whole podcast is around things we don't talk about. Why is it hidden? Why are we kind of shamed about certain choices we're making or conversations we're having? And I mean, obviously people don't go, oh, I can't talk about what I'm eating, but I think it is a really sensitive part of our lives, the choices we make, why we make them. I remember when I first chose to be vegetarian, people were really curious, why are you vegetarian? And I kind of felt like I had to be armed with an answer every time. And I made a huge, I remember at the time there was more than one choice. I mean, it was the animal rights and their kind of choices around that. I felt sometimes we just didn't appreciate where the animal was coming from. So it was sort of an early emergence of consciousness. Like, we just go to the supermarket, we just expect it, we open a packet, we don't think, hang on, that was an animal beforehand. It's so disconnected. I was also interested in the environmental impact. So, it was emerging how much the livestock industry was kind of impacting the land, and all those sorts of longer term kind of impacts were of interest. And then that kind of health thing too, like you suddenly had to be conscious about what you were eating when you take a whole really obvious thing like meat out of your diet. You have to kind of supplement, you can't just wing it. You can't just turn up at a restaurant and expect that they will have something there that you're going to like. You have to be far more proactive, don't you? And go to someone's house, you have to think about how that's going to impact them and stuff. So that's all kind of why I did it. But I guess, what have your experiences around this being a bit of a taboo and not necessarily shamed, but people having an opinion on what you're choosing and how we make choices around our eating?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a very heated area of discussion, nutrition, the ideology of, why you choose what you choose to eat. I initially did it for health. So it was purely about that kind of, recovery. I wanted to eat better. I wanted to prevent disease in the future. So it was, and my background as a nurse as well, I have a very good understanding of disease and disease process. So I wanted to do everything I could to prevent those diseases that I saw every day in the hospital. And the animal welfare thing, I never thought of much. And I guess that's where most of Australia is at the moment. Of course, you don't want to hurt animals, but meat has always been a part of most people's diets, and that's the way it's always been. Why would I want to stop doing that if I don't have to? Because I like the taste, I like the convenience of it. But you take away the convenience aspect, people wouldn't be going out and killing their own animals.
No.
So it's kind of the blinders are definitely on when it comes to just eating meat in Australia at the moment.
And it's so accessible, isn't it? Like, there's not only certain times of the year you can have a certain product. It's always available.
Year round. It's not a seasonal thing.
Yeah.
So, and I grew up with my auntie and uncle are sheep farmers, so I grew up around that kind of lifestyle as well. And the animal welfare thing really was a byproduct for me after I had adopted this plant-based lifestyle for a while, and realised that, I never want to eat meat again, because I don't want an animal to suffer just so I can have a snack or a meal when I don't have to do it. Like, I can survive quite healthily without it. And then I delved a lot more, especially in recent years, into the environmental aspect of it. So sustainability, and, you know, impact on the land, impact on, you know, our farming sector, and even more recently reading a lot more up on, you know, like plant-based meat alternative agriculture, and also cellular agriculture. So that's definitely an emerging field of interest. But I think, yeah, for me, like it just started with me realizing I don't need it. I do want to kind of have that more conscious aspect of what I'm putting in my body, because previously it wasn't, especially around, you know, the alcohol and the drugs and stuff I was putting into my body. So it just really just started out from there. And I think all of the other aspects of eating a plant-based diet and how that affects the, you know, climate change and the world around us immediately became a larger part. But also talking about that with other people is difficult sometimes. I grew up with a vegetarian sister. So she was vegetarian by the time she was 10. She'd always wanted to be a vet. So, you know, she did what she believed in, and credit to her, she's still vegetarian, albeit much more healthily. She dabbled a bit in veganism, but she didn't do it very well, because there wasn't a lot of information out there. So she just stopped eating meat. She stopped eating eggs and dairy and everything, but she didn't replace it with anything to boost that nutrition. So she was subsisting on not much at all, and she started kind of losing her hair, and it was not a great kind of healthy period for her. So I saw that, and she was one of the people who were always at us about meat intake and stuff. And I'm guilty of giving her the old, you know, sure you don't want a steak tonight joke. Because I just roll my eyes at people that say that to me now. But I was definitely one of those people that just didn't want to hear it. I wasn't ready. I didn't want anyone to talk to me like on their soapbox about what I should be eating and what I shouldn't be eating. So having come from that experience earlier on, I definitely am aware of that with other people. So I don't, you know, when people ask me why I wanted to become plant-based or, you know, go vegan, I'd make it very much about my choice. So it was about me and my health, instead of talking to people about what they should be doing, which unfortunately is a common way that people who discover this lifestyle start to talk about, because they're so excited about, you know, everything veganism, plant-based eating has to offer, and how healthy it is, and how didn't they not know about all of the nutritional aspects before, and they just want to shout it from the rooftops. But that doesn't come off very well with the rest of the population.
It can come across judgy, can't it? Especially,
Really,
yeah, it's like, oh, I mean, I've heard people say it to me, or I've been witness to it, where it's like, oh, you're eating dead animals, or I don't, you know, like, it's not particularly nice when someone's about to eat a meal to have that kind of, yeah, put in their space, I guess. But yeah, that's why I think it is still sensitive, and how do we go about making it available? I think what's really interesting and what you've just brought up is how we both came at a choice quite different angles, but then once you're in the choice, you start to learn about what else is available and the benefits that come with it. I think so, you know, for anyone listening, you might have made choices. It's about kind of, can we today open up your perspective to incorporate others again, or are you aware of what it is you're eating and how it's affecting your health and the environment and other things? And then you can make some, yeah, like we said, conscious choices. Maybe we need to clarify that. Do you think that's pretty obvious what a conscious choice is, or are we making
maybe not, because, you know, back before I kind of set off on this path, I wouldn't have known what conscious eating was. There wasn't really a wellness kind of trend.
How would you describe it then?
I think conscious eating is being aware of what you're putting in your body, but also the, where that food has come from, how it's been grown, a lot about how that, growing that food impacts the environment. And I guess it's all of the aspects of food, not just buying it from the supermarket and putting it in your body, but it's about what happened before that. And, I guess you can also think about it in terms of who grew the food. Were they remunerated properly? Were they treated fairly? If it was, for an example, like fair trade chocolate or fair trade coffee, that you're getting from overseas, like how was that grown? Was that grown, with people who were treated fairly and remunerated properly for their time? And even in terms of, I think with fresh produce and stuff like that, even if consciously eating meat, which is definitely still a choice, is that stuff coming locally, or is that traveled thousands of miles to get to you? I think there's so many ways to think about where you get your food and stuff. And are you getting it from the supermarket because they don't have a great track record of paying the farmers very well, or are you getting it straight from the grower or a farmer's market where you can talk to the people who grew the food, and did it have herbicides and pesticides sprayed on it, or is it organic, or are you insecticide free? There's so many ways to ask the questions, but if you're not open to what conscious eating even is, or is there an option that isn't the supermarket? Because I didn't really know that beforehand. I think it's just about opening up people's eyes in a very non-judgmental way and just saying there are other options out there. Like, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about, where your foods come from, instead of just, you get it from the supermarket, you cook it and you eat it. And, you make those choices in the supermarket. I'm not eating meat, but where has my lettuce come from? That it goes beyond just that initial shop to thinking about the wider picture and how everyone feeds into that, in terms of who was involved in.
So it's sort of like the is it paddock to the plate kind of concept that you'll sort of hear, that it's not just waiting for it to be on your plate. And a lot of people don't prepare their own food. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. But we don't, and I think as we get in a busier lifestyle, which many of us are living in, your food's almost, I don't know, it's just something you have to do to keep going. It's not even like we don't necessarily even have the time to prepare our food, to sit down and eat our food. Like, these are sort of things that are in some families or some lifestyles not existent. It's kind of, how do I eat and run, or where can I buy it so that I don't have to even think about it? And we're kind of, I guess, highlighting what that might, the impact that might have on us, but equally what's available when you start to shift and go, it's really valuable, worthwhile time to put into that. There's real advantages that come from knowing and making those choices yourself. And really, that maybe you have to take some accountability is also what I'm kind of hearing and discovering. You can't just assume that because it says that it's good for you, that it is good for you. And you can't just assume that because it's in a supermarket that it is ethically produced and or sustainable or anything. You've got to kind of be curious and interested. And for any of you listening, I get that this can sometimes feel overwhelming, or like, oh my God, I'm so far from where Steph is and even what I'm been doing and making choices. But it's not around saying you have to go the whole way. These are little choices that you can be making, even if it is just starting to get interested in, where am I buying my food? Maybe I could buy my food once a week from a farmer's market, or once a month from a farmer's market, and just get interested in what that might taste like if I do that. Or it could be reading the labels when you hadn't been before, or trying to cook something, one meal a week vegan or something. There's all different options, isn't there?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And although I'm an all or nothing person and I kind of jumped into it straight away, I also didn't have a family at that point. I was single. I was living in a share house. I was working full time and I had extra time on my hands. Like my time was my own. However, if you're trying to do this with a family and you're working and you're trying to juggle a million different responsibilities, like sometimes food and the food you put on the table is not, you don't have a lot of time to research where that comes from and everything. And I think what's also should be said about this is we should acknowledge the privilege that we had, well, we have in even talking about conscious eating, because there are parts of this city, parts of this country where people don't have even access to a shopping centre. So
fresh food too.
and fresh food, exactly, or even, you know, the funds to put food on the table. So I think it's worth kind of saying that we are incredibly privileged to be even talking about alternative ways of getting our food, because that's not open to everyone. But in terms of talking about the, you know, the things that you can do, it's always a journey. I didn't start out my, you know, I guess my health journey knowing everything I know about sustainability and, you know, and trying and no waste cooking and, you know, all the things I know about plant-based cooking. It was just my passion for it opened up all of these new avenues of research and opened me up to new experts and people, you know, to have great conversations with and learn more about it and slowly implement things. Like I can't be an all or nothing person now because I just don't have the time to delve into things head first like I used to. So yeah, I think that slow and steady type of approach really goes so much better towards long lasting change than, you know, trying something for 2 weeks all in and then realizing that just, you know, it's too hard or you know, doesn't suit your lifestyle. So little bits make a big change.
A little bits. It's awesome. I actually really liked what you were saying about acknowledging and being grateful for the opportunities we have to make choices like these ones we're talking about. Because I also think it's introducing, which a lot of people who've got a religious background might do in terms of saying grace at the table, or, you know, it's that sort of pausing, being grateful for the fact that there is food on the table and that they've been fortunate enough to have access to it and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, that's part of this consciousness too. And maybe that's the first step you might be interested in making, is just being grateful for the food you have, what it does for your body, you know, that your body can process. It's crazy what our bodies can do. We chew of something and suddenly we can move and grow and repair and do all this. It's mind-boggling, really. So that's sort of, yeah, there's so many different layers in this. But I guess we were, wanting to encourage you to maybe have a discussion with someone, or go and pick up a book, or follow Steph and find out, you know, what else you can learn. One of the things I've found too is sometimes you've had an experience and it hasn't been such a good one. So maybe you're living in a family where people are a bit more inclined to judge you, or you have put out something on the table and everyone went, ooh, this is disgusting. And so you don't even want to go back there, because I know maybe you've had tofu before and it was, you know, wasn't a good experience and you'll never go back. How have you found that, sort of trying to get past those prejudices, I guess, we have around, or like a milk, you know, a substitute milk, and it, you know, they've improved so much and we've had some experience with it, it's put us off. How do we kind of go back there? Or have you found you've gone back or encouraged people to try it again? Or
I guess just through personal experience and telling those stories. Like my husband is not vegan. He eats what I cook, but he still loves meat. He still loves dairy. But it took me I mean, we don't have dairy in our house anymore because the kids have basically transferred onto like oat milk and stuff like that. But it was a big battle trying to get something across the line for my husband that was up to his standard of dairy in a coffee. So we struggled. I mean, I've been drinking almond milk, soy milk, different types of milk for years and years. So I became accustomed to the taste very quickly, but he was harder to kind of convince. So, I mean, I think also the fact that I live in a family who still eat meat and still enjoy dairy and stuff like that, not on such a regular basis, but it's still an issue sometimes for me to get them to eat certain things. So I definitely understand where people come from when they say, look, I had this horrible bland tofu the other day, like I never want to eat it again, like what are my other options? And it's like, well, what did you do with the tofu? Nothing, I just ate it. Well, tofu's like chicken, if you just eat chicken, it's horribly bland and boring. But if you season it and you try new cooking techniques with it, there's worlds of flavor that open up. And I think it's just about normalizing the idea of taking those things like beans or tofu or, even certain vegetables that people have always grown up with an aversion to because they didn't like the way their mum and dad cooked it. Yeah, like boiled Brussels sprouts or overcooked broccoli and cauliflower with, cheese sauce. The things that we kind of go like, oh, never really liked that. There are so many different ways to eat and prepare things that can be delicious. So I think my message to people around that is to experiment. And I know it's hard to find the time to become creative in the kitchen, but just picking one thing, saying like, right, I'm going to try different ways to cook cauliflower this week because I've got a cauliflower from the supermarket. I never really liked it, but let's give roasted cauliflower a try, or let's give, sauteed cauliflower rice a try, or, try making something out of it, like putting it in a soup with other things. There's so many delicious ways that you can prepare each and every plant out there. So I think for people that have had bad experiences with something, there is also so many other alternatives. So if you had a bad experience with soy milk or you think it tastes like crap, try oat milk, try cashew milk, try macadamia milk.
The brands or fresh versus, like a homemade
Exactly.
one versus a
Exactly. Like
one.
try a different brand that doesn't have so many additives and emulsifiers in it, and you might find it goes better. Or try one that's, better for coffee. It's just, it's a bit of trial and error because once again, everyone's different. Everyone's got unique bodies and unique taste preferences. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So I think a little bit of creativity when you're exploring a new way of eating is really important.
I love
As
all
well as
that.
asking good questions.
It's super helpful just to be encouraged to know that just because you've had a bad experience, it might have been you haven't cooked it in a way. Like I know with tofu, you opened up a whole new way of actually preparing it. I didn't realize that. And for all you listening, soaking up all the liquid out of the tofu before you cook it allows whatever you're marinating it to be soaked up. It's like kind of a sponge.
Yeah.
And I'd never been told that. And so it's obviously never soaked up what I've marinated it in before. And it's always squishy and it's gross. But it was mind-blowingly different with a few kind of tips. So that's where, and we'll talk more about what you offer, but having someone who's worked with the product a lot more, who knows how to use it, can give you all these options, kind of gives you a bit of a shortcut really, and direct route to something that you know will taste good, because that's sort of your end goal, is to make sure it's delicious. So to give you hope, I guess we touched on, and I thought that was really interesting point, and for many people, I'm the same, where my family still eat meat. So how we kind of juggle different diets and different ways of people choices that people are making, and advice you have for people who might be feeling judged, or it's a bit exhausting to have to cook multiple things, or how do you do it?
It's kind of easy in my house because I do all the cooking. I'm the plant-based one, so people have to eat what I cook. My kids are too young to cook for themselves, so they don't have a choice. However, I still have, I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, so they still go through that fussy kid, I love this yesterday, but I'm not touching it today kind of thing. So I still struggle with that, but it's about, especially with kids, it's about repeat exposure to, to new things, and they might not like one way that it's prepared, but they might like it, differently. I know with, say, cauliflower, my kids aren't a big fan of steamed cauliflower, but neither am I, but they will happily eat like a whole cauliflower roasted straight off the pan because it's a taste sensation. Sometimes they love when I prepare like a crispy tofu, and sometimes they're just like, nah, like the way you've prepared this tonight is not that great, Mum, even though they're not that articulate.
Critique.
It's more like, I'm not eating this.
This is an 8 out of 10, not a 10.
Yeah. Needs a little more seasoning, Mum.
Yeah.
They'll get there. But it's just about, you keep on trying, and then, sometimes my husband will come home and just be like, I've been training really hard. I really feel like a piece of steak. So, he can go and get that. Or we go over to someone's for a barbecue and they prefer to have real sausages over, the plant-based ones. So, yeah, I'm happy if they're eating meat on a less regular basis. So those, once a month or once a fortnight, if it comes in the house, it's fine. But it's, given all the research around animal product consumption, I think less is definitely more in terms of that. And, if we're heroing plants every night and trying to get in a diversity of different legumes and veggies and fruits and whole grains and stuff like that, then I think we're on the right track.
Yeah,
I know everyone's different.
Because we touched on it, but that sort of judgment that a vegetarian diet is, it's for weaklings, not weaklings, but it doesn't necessarily give you the energy you need. You need a steak or you need to eat meat, you need protein, and this sort of idea that I think has been perpetuated probably in movies and, I don't know, advertising and stuff, put some pork on your fork and all this kind of stuff.
The diet culture is everywhere. But continue.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so it's sort of this idea that, for men maybe, that it's not as
manly,
yes, and then I guess the cooking factor, it is a lot easier to chuck a steak on a barbecue, chat to your friends, have a beer, and then at the end of it, slap something else next to it. Whereas, when you're plant-based, you've got to think about what it is you need in your diet to have a whole, the whole range of nutrients in it and everything. But it takes a little bit long, doesn't it, just to think about where they came from and having them fresh. Like we said, it's really hard in some parts of Australia. When we travelled and we were camping, you can't have fresh vegetables. They don't last very long in a camping fridge and stuff like that, or hot weather. And so you have to be a little bit creative around tin foods and maybe longer life foods and stuff. Where am I going with this? Not quite sure, but I guess I'm just highlighting that it's to be aware. It's a different choice, but not to be put off if there's someone member in your family, that you can also layer it, I guess. Perhaps that's what I'm hearing too. You can still offer the plant-based, and then they can have their extra sausage or steak with that same.
I think looking at it like that, as more of a plant predominant diet, and then having your meat or animal products as a condiment to that, is a great way to think about the ratio of animal product to plant-based stuff, that, you know, that it should be like, that is most supportive for health and longevity. So eating, you know, a lot of research has shown that eating small amounts of meat is not harmful, but eating large amounts of meat is. So I posted recently that there is, you know, very, very few studies that have ever said that eating vegetables is not a good idea. So that is, like, you know, one thing that everyone can agree on is eating veg is one of the healthiest things you can do for your diet. And I know that there's a lot of controversy in nutritional research, because everything is, you know, there's one day something will come out and say kale's a superfood, and then another day it'll come out and say, you know, don't eat too much kale, it's bad for you, or, you know, soy will give you cancer, and then soy is actually protective against cancer. And there's so much confusion in nutrition, but
How
there
have you
are some.
found, yeah, how do you kind of suggest people work with that? Because it is a bit overwhelming when you think you're making a choice and then someone might point out, or you read or discover that maybe that's not the case, or, you know, there's a lot of vested interest, I guess, in each.
Totally. And it's easier for me because I came from a science background as a nurse, so I am used to reading research. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. And I think in that case, you've got to look at where the information's coming from. If it's coming from your, you know, social media feed, then have a look at who owns the account that's, you know, purporting all this information, and do they have a vested interest in it? Or if you're reading it in the newspaper or listening to it as a little soundbite on the news, like, I'm assuming that whatever it says, sorry, that's the alarm for my sourdough. Whatever it says, there's got to be some controversial aspect of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking about it in the media. So you've kind of got to ask the question, yeah, like, is this controversy? Is this controversial, and why are they actually talking about it on the TV? Because it's not interesting to talk about eating more vegetables. Everybody knows that. But it's more interesting to talk about whether meat's going to kill you, or, you know, butter's good for you, or because it's controversial, and it's not something that everyone agrees on. So I think to take it back to really simple principles to base your diet around, and, you know, this is for everyone, not just the people that don't eat meat, but people that do eat meat as well, is to look at what those health pillars really are. And that's, everyone agrees that eating more vegetables is really important. Everyone agrees that drinking lots of water is really important. Eating unprocessed and as close to the whole food as possible is really important. And if you look at all of the nutritional ideologies out at the moment, you know, and we've got anything from veganism to paleo to keto, and everything in between, you know, flexitarian and pescatarian, Mediterranean diet, they all have the same principles at heart, which is eating unprocessed foods, eating lots of vegetables, and eating foods as close to whole as possible. And where they differ in their meat consumption or in the amount of fat they have in their diet or whatever is such a small part of the whole ideology. So I think it's important to just take it back to that. And then you look at the blue zones in the world, which are those places that have, you know, the longest living people in it. So places like, I'm going to forget all of the different islands, but there's a place in Greece, a little island in Greece. There's a place in Japan. There's even a place in the middle of America called Loma Linda. They all adopt a predominantly plant-based diet with or without a little bit of animal product. And they have the most amount of centenarians, so the people that live to 100 and over, in their culture. And I think that's like, the proof is in the pudding there, that is probably the most supportive, health supportive diet. Is just eat more plants.
It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? So someone who's listening who would like to try this, maybe they or want to increase plants in their diet, what are some suggestions you have, or ways that they can go about that, or strategies to shine more love and light on this whole kind of area of their life?
I think for someone who's really just getting into this way of kind of thinking about food, and there's a little movement that was created by James Cameron, the movie maker, and his wife, and it's called OMD, 1 meal a day. And it's literally that. You start out by introducing 1 meal a day without animal products. And you think, what's the easiest thing you could start with? Probably breakfast. Because breakfast has the most amount of meals, common meals that are accidentally plant-based or incidentally plant-based. So, you could start your day with a smoothie, or you could start your day with granola, or you could start your day with porridge, or, whatever. Breakfast is probably the easiest one. And once you kind of have that in your day and you realize, well, that wasn't so bad, why don't I try doing a lunch or a dinner this week that is plant-based? So whether that's like a quinoa and chickpea salad with heaps of veggies, or if it's replacing my spag bowl with lentils instead of mince, just little tips and tricks like that can really be a great way to start. Or having a curry and putting chickpeas in it instead of chicken, or having what else? Doing doing tacos and doing beans instead of having your mince. There's lots of different ways and different ingredients you can use in your kind of standard fare. So
I was going to say, because you're not actually saying no more bolognese, no more pasta. You're actually saying, what can we just substitute out and put in that has maybe the same sort of texture or similar flavor profile? Because I've definitely tried with my kids and my daughter, and I've shared with Steph because it was a massive miracle, who doesn't eat many vegetables, ate a lasagna which had mushrooms in it, which she won't eat. So there were all these sort of ways of, and she cooked it with us, so she knew exactly what was going in it. But because the mushroom has that flavor of meat, or a little bit more closely flavored to meat, it kind of got through her pretty stringent taste for checking and all this sort of stuff. So I think I love what you're suggesting. They're not like you have to go and do tofu and go straight there and try something that's a new flavor to you. You're actually sort of suggesting start with the things that you've already got that you like, and the tacos is a great one, or even I've done recently rice paper rolls. Just take out the meat that you would normally put in.
So take out the chicken prawns and add in some marinated tofu. And there, tofu's not so alternative that it's hard to access. And now, whatever supermarket you go into, there's pre-prepared, like pre-marinated tofu that literally all you have to do is cook, and it's really delicious.
Mm-hmm.
I use them occasionally as well when I am going to a barbecue and I haven't had time to do my own. Like, they're great alternatives, and they're convenient, and they're really healthy.
And faster than a meat too. Like, a meat you have to cook will take maybe 5-10 minutes to put on a fry pan or whatever. Whereas the tofu, it's like basically warm it up. It's super quick.
Yeah. And now that it is more mainstream, there are so many more companies coming up doing plant-based meat alternatives. So even those ones that you can get at the supermarket that are, like meat and they're made out of pea protein, or, you've got kind of chicken nuggets that are, soy protein or something, even though they're processed and you would be better off going whole foods, just taking that step away from meat, or, instead of doing the processed chicken nuggets, you do the soy protein chicken nuggets. You're actually still getting so much more fiber than you would with meat. Like, there's still, even though it's still processed, going to the plant-based meat alternatives, you can still get more nutrition from it than you would out of the processed meat one. So there is something to say for those pre-packaged options, because they're still a great stepping stone to embracing more plants in your diet. And it's just replacing, replacing things that you are already in your diet and going like, well, there is another way. And, once I try this, maybe I'll try, a burger that's already been processed, a processed plant-based meat alternative. And realize, well, that actually tastes pretty good. Maybe I'll try a veggie burger, or maybe I'll try some tofu tonight in my burger, or on the barbecue or something. And it's just that awesome stepping stone. And then you can figure out, well, if I can buy the tofu and then come up with a marinade from, an internet recipe, then maybe I'll try that. And it's just those small little changes.
Confidence too, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you get more confident with cooking with more spices and herbs and different condiments and flavors at home, you realize, well, what I do to a chicken, I can do to tofu, or I can do to beans, or, instead of whipping up a mince rissole, I can do, a black bean and sweet potato burger or something. So
actually, that's all of the things I used to do when people would say, how can you be vegetarian, or one of those questions. It was like, I realized that what I liked about the meat was often the marinades or the sauces that I was putting with the meat. Like, it wasn't really the meat itself that I was enjoying. I'd enjoy like a Thai green curry or something, and it was the curry I liked, not the chicken in it necessarily. So I was like, and if I still do that with vegetables, I'm going to like it just as much. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that goes for most meats in those kind of broader dishes, that the meat is the textural component. So if you replace that textural component with something else that's textured, that's plant-based, but you still having all those beautiful flavors coming from plants, which is where we get all our herbs and spices and flavorings, then it's kind of easy to think about, well, if I'm having a chicken curry, I can replace that with some tofu. Or if I'm having a stir fry, I can put, I don't want to always go to tofu, but, things like tempeh, or I can put beans in it instead of like going for a beef stir fry. Or, do cashew and veggies instead of, instead of putting meat in my stir fry. So there's so many different things that you can do, but it can be really overwhelming when you're just starting out. So stick to what you know, make those little swaps, and then you can gradually kind of build that confidence.
I found one tip too that you shared with me, and I remember, like, sometimes you feel like a salad, and people might have this experience where plants don't necessarily fill them up. They feel like they have to eat lots, and you made the observation, it's like, well, you need to make sure you've got something in it, like a protein or something to balance it out. And I think when you introduce things into the dressing, so like hemp seeds or something like that, you realize that you've actually got these ways of bulking out, I guess. Oh, I think we got an unstable internet going on. Are you hearing me, Steph? Is that all okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I was saying, when you introduce some more nutrients to your dish, and you mightn't even realize they don't have to be bulky bits of meat. They can be things like hemp seeds, or different kinds of seeds and nuts and things like that. You feel full after you've eaten. because I know a lot of the times we think vegetarian might be just a few lettuce leaves, and that's not going to fill me up, but it's because we haven't learned, we don't have all these different things at our fingertips, which you have access to and make us aware of. So as a listener, if you want, if you want to, I think it's a good time for us to share what you do, Steph, like how, what you're offering that people might be interested in hearing more about and getting involved in. I definitely know I was always interested in cooking, but Steph's opened up heaps of different tips and different insights, I guess, little things you've learned along the way about how to cook things that make it taste better, make your kids like it, which is a bonus.
Yeah.
And interesting, like really exciting ways to cook things that I've never tried before. So there's this, it's almost a real range. You can go for your stock standard food, but you can also go kind of, I don't know, fine dining almost.
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying all that, because it's nice to know that my passion is inciting other people's passions. I think that that just I've lost my train of thought. With the cooking club and how we kind of connected, it's so nice to know that even though you've lived that kind of plant-based lifestyle for a lot of your life, it's nice to know there's still more that you can learn. And I know that being vegetarian and vegan, there is a bit more of a stepping stone to take out that the dairy and the eggs that vegetarians rely on a lot. So it is really fun to kind of delve into those types of things with you. And also for people that are beginning this kind of thing, it's there's so much for them to take on as well, but also you kind of take what you like and and leave what you don't. So and once again, everyone's really different in what they like and the taste preferences and even what they can digest. So kind of that teaching that ability to adapt recipes and adapt to your taste preferences and what your family likes and stuff is really important. So I'm really glad that you've gotten so much out of it so far.
And I was going to say, I love that you do that. You always share a recipe and go, if you don't have this, you can use this. There's all it, because as a person who can be overwhelmed sometimes when you don't have things and you think, oh, I've got to go to the supermarket. Steph's always off, giving you options. Like, if you don't have this nut, try this one. Or if you can't, if someone in the family can't have garlic, here's 3 or 4 different options, or leave it out altogether. And it builds your confidence. Like, oh, good, that's not going to ruin the whole thing. Whereas often when you faced with a recipe and you're like, I don't even know what it is. If I go to the super, I don't know how to handle it. And then when I do, I don't even know if I'm going to like it. Whereas, you've got real flexibility in your recipes. So I'll let you go.
I think that's what Penny's talking about is an online cooking club I started at the start of COVID. So this was a few months after we met, I think. And I couldn't do my face-to-face cooking classes that I usually run in Melbourne because of government restrictions about people coming over to your house and stuff. So I started up an online cooking club, which has been a real learning curve for me, doing things online and learning how to video and edit and all that kind of thing. But it's been really fun and there's been a really good response to it. And I just, I'm so glad I still had the opportunity over this last year to still share what I know and love. So if you want to join the cooking club, it's all run through a Facebook group, and I share pre-recorded and live cooking classes, and it's kind of just centered around easy meals that you can cook for your family, or cook for a crowd, or just cook for, one or two people, that incorporate all of the amazing ingredients that a plant-based diet has to offer, but in little kind of easy to manage bits. So there is a lot of information to know, but you can kind of go through a class and I'll talk about the ingredient and I'll talk about different ways you can use it or alternatives to that, so that it builds your confidence in the kitchen and your intuition as well with cooking, which is a hard thing to grasp if you're not used to it. So if you do want to join the cooking club, I'm opening it up for intakes, which I only do a couple of times a year. And I'll give Penny a little special code so you can get 10% discount if you book through that code. But also, if you're not interested in that, if you just want to check out a couple of free recipes and stuff, you can follow me on @Steph Schall Hub on Instagram, where I often share new recipes and little videos and tutorials and stuff like that. Or there's my free Facebook page, the Veg State, and that is me sharing a lot of nutritional information about plant-based eating, easy short recipes, and there's a lovely little community in there as well. So I'll share some shorter cooking classes and stuff.
Sorry, I think they might have cut out. So it's a veg-centric plate. Is that right? I'll put them in the links, but if someone's listening and busting
the veg-centric plate.
The veg-centric plate on Facebook.
The Facebook group. And then I've got my Instagram profile, which is @Steph Schall Hub.
And Schall spelled SCHALL.
CHALLHUB for hub. Yeah. And I'm also working on an online course for plant-based kind of beginners. So teaching busy mums how to cook plant-based meals without a recipe, basically, which is about kind of teaching you templates for meals, and then teaching you how to increase flavor and flavor pairing, and doing that with more intuitive cooking style. So you have the option of using a recipe or of using what you've got on hand. So working on that, and that should be out hopefully mid-year. But otherwise, those other avenues to check out what I'm doing. And I'm opening up for group cooking classes again in Melbourne soon. So I'll be really excited to start doing that face-to-face.
Awesome. So there's heaps of options. If people wanted to connect with you, they can through any of those sort of socials. Steph's online, so she can respond, and got questions. I'm always asking questions. But I think and I think what's brilliant is when you do in a cooking class walk someone through, there's always substitutes or tips on where you can buy things and the most economical way to do it, because like we said before, making some of these choices, they aren't necessarily the cheapest option on the shelf. If you're choosing organic or you're choosing to substitute something that's mainstream with something less mainstream, it often will cost a little bit more. So where you've got tips on how to do that, it's always really helpful. I'm thrilled that you were able to kind of help us shine love and light on the choices we're making. Hopefully, I think it's like everything that I've been doing, there's layers that you peel back, and it's wherever you're at, absolutely fine and perfect, but is there another layer you can peel back? Like, be curious. And maybe what we've talked about today might kind of open up a different avenue or peel back a different layer for you, and that would be awesome. And we look forward to connecting with you. If you've loved what you've listened to, or know someone who might be interested, if you can share it and rate it and all those things that you can do on podcasts these days, that would be most appreciated. And otherwise, have a beautiful day. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Steph?
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, and I hope that whoever's listening gets something out of it. Just, one little gold nugget to take away and start thinking about things a little bit further and maybe making some changes if that's where they're at. But I think meeting yourself where you're at is a really important step in making any change. It's being realistic about what you can do. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.